Listen to the sounds of the rain on the fragments of silicon.
All right, welcome to another installment of the Fragments of Silicon Daylight interviews. Been a while, not from a lack of trying, but here we are once again. And joining us this week is forgiveness if I mispronounced either of these, but just got to make the best shot of it. But Ayael of Synstoria.
Perfect.
Oh, good. All right. So, how we'd like to start things here is we'd like to get to know the people behind the games, the studio, and all of that business. And we do this by asking this particular question. What got you interested in video games? I suppose specifically here, visual novels.
It's a very cheesy game called Amour Sucré in French that I was playing when I was in high school. And I really, really liked it, even if it's like super cheesy and yeah. But I really hated the economical model. It's like a freemium type of thing. And it was really frustrating to me. And there is actually very, very, very few visual novel in France. So I was like, it doesn't look that hard to make. Maybe I could do something like that. And that's how I actually
last
started.
words in all of gaming.
Yeah, clearly it embarked on a journey of 10 years later, but yeah, that's actually it was my frustration from that game that makes me wanted to create visual novel. And fortunately, afterward, I start to get better at English, and I could read English visual novel, and it was like a whole new world for me, and I was super happy. I actually had to discover it, but yeah, that's the story behind me becoming a game developer.
Well, I mean, that's certainly a long and winding road. And at what point did you, decide to make this commercial project and all that?
When I got matured enough to invest my own money into the game. Like I had two kind of projects before Imperial Grace, and I was working on it with my free time, with people working for free with me, and we were like really messing around and learning how to code and do things on general matter, even like writing for this specific medium. I write since I'm very young, but writing for this specific medium is something else entirely. So yeah, I was messing around a lot, and at some point I saw I needed something more serious, more grounded, and I decided it was worth to put my own money onto it. So I started by hiring our artists, because I really wanted something professional, and it was like a commitment from me. Like, okay, I am going to spend money on this, so it means how serious I am about it. And that's how I learned from my two first really baby projects I tried to make before. And this time I knew I had a very solid outline. I had a very grounded project, a better scope, a better idea of what was to be expected, and a real budget to put on. And yeah, that's when I decided that this one deserved to be a commercial project, and I wanted to sell it, and I wanted to create something which was good enough to be deserving of being sold.
And can you tell us anything about the prior two projects?
Well, the first one was kind of a copycat of the game that actually put me into the wanted to create game things. Like necessarily, I love this game so much, but there I had grief about it, so I kinda wanted to make my own version of it. But then I realized I strived more in medieval fantasy stuff and not like high school kind of setting, and I grew up too, so it wasn't as interesting to me than it was before. So I created this other project that was named Anoldo, and the thing is I overscoped it like hell. The one we have currently is already very big, but he has like 3 love interests you can date, and it's already 300,000 words. And the previous one I wanted to make had like 6 love interests with all their separated route and stuff like that. Like, it really wasn't scope manageable, but I just didn't know back then. Like, when you start, everybody tells you you start too big, but it's actually very hard to believe them until you experience the wall and you understand how much they were right and that you were starting too big. And that's why I scoped down and get something more grounded and realistic.
Like, well, I suppose that it's good that lessons were learned.
Yeah, well, I don't regret either of these 2 projects because you have to learn sometimes. And everything in game dev for me, it's self-taught. Like I read a lot of articles, I played a lot of games with an analytical AI, and I ask a lot of devs advices. Like, really, the thing with the visual novel community is that it's really, really, really helpful and nice. And I had learning to code wasn't actually the hardest part of creating a visual novel, because the software I use, which is RenPy, is really not that hard to understand, and it has such a lovely community for us to help. But yeah, the first time you have to try and to mess up, I guess. Like, we learn so much from our mistakes. I think it's just mandatory at some point to fail once so you can rebirth and do something better.
It depends on the developer. We found, like, but yeah, more often than not, there is what is known in the community as prototyping, and that's basically what you went through. Like, anyway, so with that in mind, how long have you been in development of Imperial Grace here?
We are in our 4th year. I obviously didn't thought it would take me this long to get there, but yeah, it was a long journey. But I'm proud we make it, and we are almost there. Like, really, I know the game is going out this year, hopefully in May or June if we keep the schedule. But yeah, this year it's going to be the final year of development, and I'm really, really relieved to see it coming to an end, especially on the writing part, because it was really tedious to write all those words into the game. and I'm very excited to put the final point.
Well, I mean, that's good, especially if you've gotten over some of the hump. I won't say completely until the game's out, especially
Yeah.
with that last mile of development.
Yeah, since then we released 2 game from a jam, 1 month long jam. So we have 2 game which are approximately 30,000 words, something like that. So we experienced the last polishing rush, and when I know it can be daunting, but frankly, after like 4 years of writing, I kind of look forward to have a different kind of challenge ahead of me, and a different type of fun.
Understandable, especially given that you said that there's 300,000 words in this visual novel of yours.
Yeah.
Now to do it. And I suppose another question I have is, what is the native language of this visual novel? Was it, are we talking like 300,000 English words, French words, German?
French. I actually write in French, and we have a translator who will translate in English. We are going to release simultaneously the 2 languages, but it's true. It's it's one more challenge, because every time I make a revision to the script, if it was already translated, we have to revise the translation too. But we can't wait for the full finished script to start translating, or it's going to take a lot of time before we can release the game. So it's really an equilibrious work, and it's among the thing I would do differently now with much more 4 year more experience. I wanted to be the one who write my own game, but I can't write good enough in English. Like, I am fluent. I hope I am understandable right now, but not. I don't have the same, poetry, maybe the same quality in my writing in English. And the thing is, a visual novel in France are so scarce. It's really not a place you can market enough to be a viable project in itself. So we have to get an English translation. And I think my next project will be in English and then translating in French, because I'm still very attached to the idea of giving more games of this type to my country. But a French translation can happen later, while the English one needs to be done immediately. And most of our marketing and our communication is done in English, and
yeah, and doing a translation, well, is not easy.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think part of the reason visual novels didn't really take off much in France is because for stuff to come in, like from Japan or whatever, they need to translate into like almost all the other EU languages as well. And that's just a lot of effort for a low volume product.
Yeah, exactly. And even all the there is a big indie English sphere for visual novel, and even there, the cost of translating a game with so many words is like super expensive, and it's usually not worth to translate it in language like French or German, even if it's 2 countries which are actually very demanding of this sort of game.
Yeah, that's partly why it took so long for the Final Fantasy games to come over to Europe.
Yeah, like mobile game, like mobile visual novel are super famous in our countries, but the translations are often like machine translations type of thing, with very bad quality translation, and it's gonna become a joke. Like when we see ads for this type of game, and even in the ads, the translation is so bad. But most of people are so desperate to have this kind of content, they will consume it anyway. I really hope that our game can reach the French audience because it was a native language it was written in. So I hope the quality, at least on the writing, is there. And we will see. But yeah, it's very expensive. And often, if you have a little budget to translate, you are going to translate in much more where there is much more people speaking this language, like Russian, Chinese, or Spanish, Portuguese, Spanish. It's kind of languages.
Well, I suppose at the very least you have novelty on your side, given what you've told us about the French visual novel scene.
Yeah, I hope. But now the problem is to reach the people. It's not
Right.
that easy since if you are not like the first, but you are among the first, especially with our like the traditional gaming audience, like as I said, mobile games are quite famous, and we have like a lot of freemium type of things. And here I'm coming with a game, and like please give me $20, and I'm going to give you the full game. You can play it as much as you want. You can taste all the choices, get all the illustration. Once you have it, you can play it for as much as you want. But you have to.
You don't have to buy. You don't get ads. You don't have to buy
Yeah.
any premium currency.
Well,
Yeah,
I mean, that
exactly.
does beg a question. Like, are you developing this for like mobile first, or is it coming to Steam first?
No, it's a Steam first, and that's where it's going to be hard to find an audience because they are not used to going on Steam for this kind of game and paying upfront for this kind of game. Even if we do have a very long demo, they can try to see if the game it's to their test. Yeah, that's the friction here is like, will they give us a chance when most of the time ultimately most player will pay more than $20 to get a game, because with all the freemium it's like €2 per parla, like a bit with a bit and with a bit, and a year after you spend $50 on it. But it's not the same psychological thing to say, okay, I'm going to give $20 to this game right now to be able to play it as much as I want. For me, it was important because I don't really like all the freemium kind of game and psychology that goes behind that tricks. Like they are made to be frustrating to push the player to use the premium currency.
And like a lot of them don't realize they just spent $50 over the course of a year.
Yeah.
They just see that one $2 transaction, and unless their phone's like, hey, yeah, you've spent X number of dollars on this game so far, and you're like, I did what?
Yeah. And it's something I find a bit vicious, like, and in the same time, I don't really condemn like all the studio who are doing that, because earning
people got to
money,
get paid and whatnot.
Yeah, at some point you're gonna leave from it, and if it's the only way, it's the only way. But it's not like my values. It's not what I wanted to do, because, as I said earlier, my wish to become a game dev come from this frustration, from this. So I was like, no, I'm not going to complain about something and just do exactly the same thing. But yeah, the barrier to entry is higher because of that fact.
Like, this is about to turn into an episode of 16-Bit Sensation. But, in fairness, I don't know of any visual novels that really do the freemium thing. Not saying that they don't exist. It's just
they're probably much smaller affairs on like mobile and not like on Steam where we usually lie.
Right. Like, anyway, so we should delve into the game itself. As in, what is Imperial Grace? What's going on here?
Well, Imperial Grace, it's a political game where you play an empress that have to rule her country. And during the story, you have tons of difficult choices to make sure that you and your empire survive. And along the way, you meet very nice or less nice people, including 3, maybe 4 you can romance on the way. There is an optional resources management part of the game. We wanted something really organic where like choices cost resources depending on what you do. Like, for example, okay, I'm going to send the army. Well, you have an army resources. So if you choose to send the army, it will cost you army. Or, okay, I'm going to give you the money for your project. Well, it costs you money, stuff like that. So it's very organic, but since we are still aiming more to the visual novel crowd, we make it optional for people who just want to enjoy the story and the dilemma, or just want to replay. Like sometimes when you replay a game for the 3rd or 4th time, you are just here to see the little variation and test out the weather, and you don't want to be there managing your stuff like that. So yeah, this part is optional.
Now, are there like
But
plot significance? Say, if you send your army to a rival country, would anything have like different dialogue options from that compared to other things that you could do?
Yeah, well, typically you will. The game is like, okay, this country is being menacing. Okay, do you send the army? Do you send an ambassador? Are you trying to bribe the main counselor of this country so it calm down the other emperor?
Mm-hmm.
That's like 3 completely different way to handle a situation, and usually, unless it's hinted that it's a bad idea to do something,
Mm.
all 3 are perfectly valid. And playing with resource management on just had another layer of complexity, because sometimes you want, like, for example, if you always want to pick like the diplomatic option, well, you will run out of diplomatic resources. At some point, you will lack of ambassador or like favor to ask to someone, or like thing that you can use to convince someone because you know one of their dirty secrets, something like that. So at some point, if you are playing with resource on, you will run out of one resources if you always pick the same kind of choices, which force you to be a bit more versatile, or to sometimes pick a choices you think is less good but still worth it. And yeah, so it makes the game more difficult, but the game without is still quite difficult, like not in a sense or where you will get an immediate game over every 5 minutes. There is not that much game over into the game, but it's more like when we see players like enjoy our demo and it's like the first chapter of the game, there are several times where they had to take a few real life minutes to think about how they are going to handle the situation. And that's exactly what I wanted to create with this game, like really where you are like, it's a difficult choice. All the options seems good or are just a bit bad in their own way, and you try to imagine what's going to happen. And I worked very, very hard in the writing to make everything perfectly logical. Like sometimes you will have an unexpected outcome, but I want when you get them, you're like, yeah, okay, that makes sense. I didn't see it coming, but that makes sense.
Yeah, because I mean, storming another country isn't exactly something you do lightly,
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes you don't see immediately the effect of your decision. Sometimes you see it, sometimes it's much, 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 much later into the game where, okay, you pissed off a noble chapter 1, and chapter 6 you have a favor to ask this noble. Okay, you have to deal with the consequences of your action. That's the leitmotif of the game. You will have to deal with the consequences of your action. And I think that's enjoyable because in one hand, it can be frustrating to have so much difficult situation to juggle with, but in other end, it's really a game where you don't play an empress for nothing. You have power, huge decision power, like empire shaping power, and I think that's cool.
Like,
Mhm.
I gotta admit, I wasn't expecting a visual novel by the way of Paradox, Grand Strategy. I mean, it's honestly, it sounds like a lot of stuff I would find in a Crusader Kings title.
Yeah, that's true. I was a bit frustrating because often choices in most of the visual novel, like not all of them, obviously, but in most visual novel, choices are like, okay, there is one good option, one bad option, and one will lead to your doom, and one will lead to your happy, perfect ending. Especially since I'm playing a lot of romance game myself, and it was a bit frustrating for me, especially since there is often practically no clue about which one is a good or the bad option. So I always play with walkthrough, and it could be like without choices that would be practically the same for me at least. So was something I really, really, really wanted to do was to create something where choices matter, but like really, really, really matter and influence the story. And in the same time, choices are always lengthy. Like it's not a sentence usually. The choices are like, okay, I'm going to do that because of that, and you will have the other characters commenting on your choices or explaining the potential consequences of your choices. So every time you make a decision, you know what more or less what you are going into. Like the I don't want to trick the player into taking a choice and then realizing it's not at all what they were thinking. Like when you take an option in a role playing game and the sentence come out much more angry than you expected, and you're like,
Yeah.
no, I didn't want to watch your feelings.
Oh god, I'm remembering Fable 3 now.
Yeah, I had a couple moments like that playing the Dragon Age, for example, saga.
Mhm.
And yeah, that's something I wanted to avoid at all costs. Like normally when you pick a choice, you know where you are going. You may have unexpected consequences because you can't control everything. But yeah, you know where you are going, and your choices are very important. And our epilogue is not like one good ending, one bad ending. It's like a tons of variable who created a complex epilogue, and you will have a different outcome for different subjects, and they are completely independent one of the other. So you can have a good outcome on something and a bad outcome on something else, but it's okay because it's not bad enough to make your country crumble. And yeah, but that's true that we have a very, very strong. Like I was very inspired by, like you said, the game at the Crusader King stuff like that, and the role playing games in general, like the Mass Effect, the Bioware in general. I love that. And more recently, the Baldur's Gate. Oh, peak.
Indeed. I can really see why this game is 300,000 words plus and took 4 years. Like, uh,
Yeah.
like that's a lot. You know,
Yeah.
especially from a visual novel. Like,
The branching in the game is like when you going to do a one playthrough, you will see maybe 50% of the game because there is even if there is like a common story. And then you have like special moment with the love interest, the character you choose to romance. So you have different special moment depending on who you choose to romance. So that's a first layer of branching, and then you have all the different branching from the choices you make. And sometimes it's immediate, and then after it's like branching back onto the main story, and it's the same for everyone. And then after it will just get sideways again. And there is a lots of little details to acknowledge, like right now I'm writing the very last chapter, and it's very, 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 very long because of all the little variation I have to make. Okay, like, okay, this character, he can be alive or he can be dead. So if he is in the scene, I have to make another version of the scene where he's not, and stuff like that. So it requires a lot of tracking and a lot of patience to really acknowledge all the different variation, and a lot of tricking was also like, okay, so this character can be dead, so maybe I'm not going to use it that much at the end.
Do I want
This
to make
kind
this
of-
guy kind of in a flashback just so I don't have to totally write him out?
Yeah, like I try to find the right balance between being satisfactory, even when there could be bad consequences happening. Because if the character is alive, you may want to see him again. So I'm not going to make it to yeet him away like forever. But it's also require a reasonable amount of, okay, this character is sensitive, I'm not going to use it too much, for example. And it was just an example, but the game is also a lot point-based in order to avoid, so I can make more later consequences. And usually it works per arc, and you will have a big situation to deal with, and you have tons of little variation that can change the outcome. And at the end of the arc, I'm going to I watch your number, and if you had enough points, congratulations, you survive. And then you have like, okay, you survive because you succeed this and this and this, but be careful, you will have a bad consequences because you messed up with this. But at least it's more like, it's what at one particular point of the story, like there is several neuralgic point into the story where you will really see all the choices you make when they finally collide and have an outcome. But it's not like constantly, otherwise it wouldn't be manageable.
Right. So I don't have a good way to segue into this transition, so just go full force. But when it comes to visual novels, especially with this program, I know what our audience really wants us to hear, and that is, well, an aspect that has come up a few times, but we haven't really touched upon yet, and that's the romance and the potential, sexy time that may be contained within. Like, you've mentioned that you can romance a number of suitors, 3, maybe 4. So, who are the romanceable options in Imperial Grace?
Well, there is 3 that will be in the main game, and 1 which will have is on DLC later, thanks to our Kickstarter. So that's why I say 3, maybe 4. The main romances are Theodore, which is a duke, and his family has history with your family, like really civil war kind of history. And like, your family killed all my brother, but your family killed all my sons, so
oh boy, Montagues and Capulets over
I
here.
was just about to say something Romeo and Juliet.
So you have, your families have histories, but as Empress you try to swift the angle, and the Duke is kind of cold and not into it at first. Then you have your bodyguard, which is also the general, but things, it's not really spoiler because it's like the 3 first line of the game, but you start the game with your father being assassinated. So, during all the game, you are trying to figure out what happened, who killed him. And some people think it was you, by the way. And so, since there is this threat looming around the general, which is also a childhood friend, is taking over you and being your personal bodyguard during most of the game. Its name is Alexander, and he's very, very loyal and devoted and sweet. And the third one is Asha. She is an ambassador from a foreign country which is a matriarchy. And so she has a very different culture, but she's also very, like, she's a diplomat, so she knows how to behave properly and stuff like that. And she is very sweet too and smiley. She has a lot of energy and like she's very solo. Like, so that's the three main love interests. And the fourth one, which was a fan favorite, like initially we didn't plan him at all as an important character. Like he was more like a functional character, as it's our spy master. So he's here to get you the bad news and carry on the secret mission, like, okay, you are going to kill that person because it's annoying me and stuff like that. But I guess that the mysterious bad boys really works out. So he ended up being more endearing than I thought he would. And after the demo, everybody wanted to romance him. So since our Kickstarter was so successful, we could squeeze some budget to get him a proper romance route to. But the main issue is that he's so dedicated to his job that he doesn't see the idea of romancing someone is so strange to him.
Well,
And here we
Star
are.
Chamber isn't going to machinate its help. Like, okay. So, how do you go about in romancing one of these potential suitors? Like, is it simple choice based? Is it more gamey? Like, do you have to buy presents for them, or how does all this work?
So it's choices based, and it's something I wanted. Like I really want. Like people will do however they want, and I'm not going to stop them to play the way they want. But I want to provide an environment where people can feel free to play without a walkthrough. Like they can free to experience by themselves and really try around and see what happened. So I really wanted to reassure the people that you are not going to mess up your romance. Like you can die in a most horrible way because you messed up your country, but you're not going to mess up your romance. So it's actually very clear choices or who are you falling in love with, and since you are spending more time with them because you like them, naturally they will fall back for you, and you can carry that throughout the game. The game is mature. Like I said, it's a political game. There is a lot of difficult choices. So we really are in a level of you can torture your enemies and stuff like that. So the maturity also shows in the romance itself, where the seduction part takes a while, but once you are there, you can go very intimate with them. We actually have two sexy scenes into the game, fully consensual, and you can either like skip them in the game, like no, I don't want to, or skip them in the option like, oh, I want the fade to black, please. And yeah, so you have a very mature romance, and you can actually, since the epilogue is really detailed and stuff like that, you can even project your future with your lover.
And I suppose along those lines, it does bear asking how explicit these scenes are going to be.
Uh, like graphically, not that explicit. Probably a bit hot, but not something that qualify as porn. Writingly, we are quite explicit. The thing is, we are on a very thin line between I want to provide some good sexy time, especially since the game is targeting mostly women. Like, of course, anybody can play it, and I think it can be enjoyable for everyone. But it's still advertised as an otome game, so for women. And I really hate the conception that women doesn't want sexy times. Like, no, that's not true at all for me. But yeah, so there is this, which is like, okay, I like sexy time. I want to write sexy time, and I want you to enjoy sexy time. If you want, you can still fade to black it if you are not comfortable. But on the other hand, I don't want our game to be qualified as porn because on Steam, like it's really a marketing thing. Like on Steam, if we are qualified as porn, we are going to disappoint a lot of people because they will start the game for the sex and they will have to play 10 hours of political shenanigans before they can get their kiss and be like, I think I was robbed.
And
So-
also,
There is
with
a-
some places that can limit the reach of the game as well if it's purely,
Yeah.
marketed as sexy
True.
time.
Though
Yeah.
there is a market for that kind of combination. There are some series that I could mention, rants.
I was about to say,
Like-
where's John at? We could get him to discuss this for about an hour. I
Well,
wish
I
I
mean,
was joking.
Well, the thing of it is, we were supposed to have John on Wednesday, but he literally has nothing new to
Yeah.
for us. But that is a discussion for another time. Anyway,
Yeah, it's but like I like for example, I really like the Dragon Age games, and they have
Mhm.
sexy times in them too. Or even like the Witcher. The Witcher is a very mature game. There is very sexy time in it, and it's not qualified as porn. Yeah, that's
I don't know about The Witcher 1.
yeah. Well, I was thinking to the 3, okay.
Right.
But that's right. I really just we are dancing onto the line of what is sexy acceptable for Steam to not be into the porn category. But
Yeah.
still, it's clearly more explicit that most of the otome games I've played either Japanese or even Western one.
hmm Like, and so for my next question, it's flipping the coin, so to speak. In that, given how political this game is, can you pull a Queen Elizabeth I here and pick no one?
No. That's I actually kind of want to do that for like maybe if I have the time when I will work on the Master of Murmurs DLC, so like the first romance, I may had another option where you pick no one and end up single, but it's actually a lot of work to end up single while not robbing people away. Like I could, of course, remove all the romance part and say, hey, here you have your single route, but it would not be satisfying because it would seem like an half-assed thing, and I don't want. I want everything to be really thought and thinking like. For me, it will need to ask questions like, "Are you single because none of the character like you? But like you don't like any of the character? Are you single because you are asexual or aromantic? Are you single because you choose to make your country first and you don't want any distraction?" So like for me, it's like already 3 things and 3 branching more just to be single. Because there is tons of different reasons to be single, and then all the content I cut where you don't have your emotional moment with your romance that comes to support you in a very hard time of hardship. well, if I do a single route, it's going to be your friend, which is going to support you in your time of hardship. So it's actually more content than it may looks. That said, the game you are playing in Empress, you have a lesbian romance on it, or even and like there is political weight to your choice, and you have I'm not going to spoil it, but you have some choice where you can choose to not end up with your romance at the end of the game for tons of different reasons, and you can have an actual single ending, but you will get your romance during the game, and it's more toward the end that you can choose a different path.
That makes sense. Like, and indeed, like the flip side of all this would be if you were exploring generation, a dynasty, if you will. You know,
Yeah.
taking
Well,
taking control of like a potential heir to the throne and all that.
I plan to explore that a bit in the epilogue, because like the epilogue is in two parts. Like there is the direct epilogue at the end of the game. You are enjoying, you are seeing a bit the immediate consequences of your actions. And then there is an epilogue which is concept like writing in a storybook. Like you are reading an storybook who are talking about your rule and how he affects your rule long term wise. And in this epilogue, you can see that, like, if you really work hard to improve science, for example, like during your rule, you took a lot of choices where you were trying to encourage science. That's one of the trigger of the game. You encourage science. You may have like direct consequences into the game, into the epilogue, where they found a new technology which is super cool and you are happy. But then on the epilogue, on the long term, you will see the historian talked about how important your rule was, and how in the following centuries your country become one of the most developed and advanced of this time, because he was inspired on the long run by your work and your choices, and how your heir like carry your vision in the past or in the future or not. So you have kind of this not this idea of dynasty, but this idea of your legacy, your legacy, but centuries later. What will you remember? People will not remember the little things you do, but the big picture. What big picture will you leave to the following generation?
Indeed. And hopefully it's a good legacy, I suppose. Like,
Hopefully.
but I suppose the choices are up to the player
Yeah.
alone.
But as I said, I was very, very inspired by Dragon Age, which I love very dearly. And something I really love is, like, for example, in the third game, you can choose which one will become the divine, like the Pope of the game. And I've seen people making very different choices, and everybody think they made the best choice. They didn't pick the same, but for them it was the best choice. And that's what I want to achieve with the game, like where they can pick decision, and people are going to pick different things, and all think they made the best choice, because in their opinion, in their mind, with their sensibility, it was the best outcome possible. But the best outcome possible, it will not be the same for everyone. And that's why I really didn't want it something Manichean with a bad ending on one side and a good ending on the other side, because it depends on what is a good ending for you and what's the bad ending for you.
Well, once again, it's kind of up to the player. Yeah. Anyway, so how many people have been working on this game?
Well, there is me, which I am the lead writer, the programmer. I do the marketing and the UI design too. We have Anna, which is our artist. And she just take care of everything art-wise for the sprite and the illustration and stuff like that. We have a second Anna. We have two Anna in the team, which is the editor of the game in French, and she is bilingual, like from birth, and so she's also the translator, which is super interesting and important for us because it really ensures that the translation is up to the original writing. And since she's so good into the two language, she really makes sure to translate all the nuance properly. And I really, really think we are going to have a crazy good translation for the game because she handled those two very important position. Then we have Pierre, which is a musician, and then we have Alexandre and Samuel, who are both kind of assistant writer, and they help me writing some of the scene or the petitions, and basically they help me a lot in my work, and I get the final cut of everything. And that's the main team, and then we are working with exterior contractor, like for the backgrounds or for some very specific style illustration for the English proofreading too, for example, stuff like that.
And I suppose my final question at this point in time is, have you sorted out any sort of pricing for Imperial Grace yet?
Well, as I said, I think we are going to be around $20 for the main game. Frankly, I'm not telling like final decision until I can see the final project and I can test how long it is to play it. Because I don't like the idea. Like I see people saying a game should be priced according to the time you put in it. Like if you do 10 hours to play it, it should be $10 or something. Like that's stupid. I think that's kind of stupid way to think. Like you're not going to pay $2 to go to see a movie because it's 2 hour long. That doesn't make sense. But we can't say that the time you need to finish the game, to complete the game, the level of final polishing you can put doesn't matter into the final price you will put to the game. So 20, 25 will I have not set my mind completely right now. I don't want to underprice our project because it also doesn't set the same expectation for people, and there was a lot of work and passion in this project, and I think the team really deserve something out of it. So yeah, I really want the best compromise for what it's worth for both sides.
Right then. So I'll see if my colleagues here have any further questions for you.
I think I'm good.
Yeah, I think I've asked everything I had.
Okay.
Well,
So I want to thank you for taking time out of your schedule and being with us here today to talk about Imperial Grace. It's been a very lovely conversation, and
Yeah.
we look forward to the game coming out hopefully this year.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. It was indeed an interesting conversation. I hope I didn't get too nerdy into the writing.
No, I don't think so.
Well, it was a pleasure, and I wish everyone day because I think it's morning for you.
It's almost noon.
Okay, so
Right.
yeah, a very good day to everyone. Take
Indeed.
care.
Indeed. Anyway, the game is Imperial Grace. You can go and wishlist it now on Steam, as well as there is a lengthy demo available right now. And yeah, So that'll about do it for this installment of Fragments of Silicon. Be sure to tune in next time for the Sunday reviews. And if you enjoyed this, be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you will know when we go live next time we do so. And until we broadcast again, I shall wish you good gaming.